The Great Hall of the Celestial Palace was the most beautiful place in the entire galaxy. Walls made of living crystal stretched up toward a ceiling that showed the real stars outside. Light from 1,000 tiny floating orbs filled every corner with soft gold and silver colors. The floor was smooth white stone that had been polished for 10,000 years until it shone like a mirror. On this night, the hall was full of the most powerful beings from 12 different star systems. They had come from every corner of known space for one reason. Queen Lysara Velthani, ruler of the mighty Aetheran Dominion, was going to choose her champion and future husband. Every great empire had sent their best candidate. Every powerful family had put forward their finest son, and standing among all these giants was one, human. Nathan Cole tried not to look as nervous as he felt. He was 34 years old, with brown hair that needed a cut and a face that showed every hard year he had lived. His formal clothes had been given to him just that morning, and they still felt strange on his body. He was used to work clothes covered in engine grease. Not silk and silver thread dot around him stood beings that made him feel like a child standing among adults. The Vrikari were tall snake-like creatures with scales that shimmered in the light. Their ambassador, a massive creature named Kresh, had a body as thick as a tree trunk and eyes that missed nothing. The Sylvani were thin and graceful, with 4 arms each and skin the color of pale moonlight. They moved like dancers even when standing still. The Morthic were perhaps the strangest of all. Their bodies were made of living crystal that caught the light and threw rainbows across the walls. Every single one of them was looking at Nathan like he was dirt on their shoes. "What is that thing doing here?" hissed a Vrekari noble to his companion. He did not bother to keep his voice low. Did someone let their pet wander in from the cargo bay? Laughter rippled through the crowd nearby. Nathan kept his eyes forward and his face calm. He had heard worse. Much worse. 6 months ago, Nathan had been hauling cargo through the outer reaches. It was boring work, but it paid enough to keep his ship running and food in his stomach. He had been passing through a sector that most pilots avoided because of the unstable stars. When his sensors had picked up a distress signal, a small shuttle was caught in the gravity well of a collapsing neutron star. The pole was dragging it down towards certain death. Any smart pilot would have turned around and gotten far away. Neutron stars were killers. Their gravity could crush a ship into a ball the size of a fist. Nathan had not been a smart pilot that day. He still remembered the way his hands had shook on the controls as he pushed his old ship to its limits. The hull had groaned and screamed as gravity tried to tear it apart. He had matched speed with the shuttle, locked on with his tow cables, and pulled with everything his engines had. For 7 terrible minutes, he had fought against the pull of a dying star. Somehow, impossibly, he had won. Only later did he learn who was on that shuttle. Queen Lysara herself had been returning from a secret meeting when her ship had been damaged. Her guards had all been killed. She had been alone and moments from death when a human cargo pilot had appeared from nowhere and saved her life. Among the Aetherans, there was an ancient law called the Debt of Stars. If anyone saved the life of a royal, they earned the right to compete for the honor of becoming their champion and consort. It was a law from ancient times, back when such rescues were common. No one had thought it would ever apply to a human, but the law was the law. And so Nathan Cole, a nobody from Earth's forgotten colonies, found himself standing in the celestial palace among princes and lords. "The humans should not be here," said High Lord Taran of the Sylvani. He was tall even for his kind, with silver eyes that looked down at Nathan with disgust. "This competition is for civilized beings. What next? Shall we invite animals from the forest to compete as well?" His companions laughed. One of them, a female Sylvani with cruel beauty, spoke up. "Perhaps he could be useful. Someone needs to clean the floors after the real candidates have walked on them." Nathan felt his jaw tighten, but he did not respond. There was no point. These beings had lived for thousands of years. Their species had been traveling between stars when humans were still living in caves. To them, he was less than nothing, but he was still here, and he was not leaving. A deep horn sounded through the hall. The crowd fell silent at once. Every eye turned toward the great doors at the far end of the chamber. Queen Lysara, Velthani, entered. Nathan had seen her once before, briefly, when she had been pulled from her damaged shuttle. She had been half-conscious then, weak from lack of air. He had not really looked at her face. Now he could not look away. She was nearly 7 feet tall, with skin that seemed to be made of liquid silver. It shifted and flowed as she moved, catching the light in ways that human eyes could barely understand. Her hair was white as fresh snow and fell past her waist. Her eyes were the deep purple of distant nebulae, filled with ancient wisdom and power beyond measure. She wore a gown that seemed to be woven from starlight itself. It trailed behind her like the tail of a comet, leaving faint traces of light in the air. A crown of crystal and captured stars rested on her head. She was the most beautiful and terrifying thing Nathan had ever seen. The queen walked slowly through the hall. The crowd parted before her like water before a ship. Every being bowed low as she passed. When she reached the raised platform at the center of the room, she turned to face the assembled candidates. Her eyes swept across them. The Vrikari in their armor, the Sylvani in their flowing robes, the Morthic with their bodies of precious crystal, lords and princes and heirs to great empires, and one human in borrowed clothes. For just a moment, her gaze stopped on Nathan. He felt something pass between them. Recognition, perhaps, or maybe just curiosity. Then she looked away, and the moment was gone. "Candidates," she said. Her voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the vast hall without effort. "You have come from across the stars to prove your worth. The trials will begin at dawn tomorrow. 3 challenges await you. The trial of mind, the trial of body, the trial of soul. Only those who pass all 3 will remain in the competition." She paused, and her next words fell like stones into still water. "Many of you will fail. Some of you may die. This is the way it has always been. The champion of the Aetherian Queen must be the finest being the galaxy can offer." Ambassador Kresh stepped forward and bowed low. "Your Majesty honors us with this opportunity. I speak for all candidates when I say we are prepared to prove ourselves worthy of standing at your side." "Do you speak for all candidates?" Lysara asked. Her eyes moved to Nathan. "Even the human?" Every face turned toward him. Nathan felt the weight of 1,000 stares pressing down on him. His heart was beating fast, but he forced himself to stand straight. "I speak for myself, Your Majesty," he said. His voice sounded strange in the vast silence. "I did not come here looking for honor or power. I came because I was told I had the right to be here. If that right is real, then I will face your trials. If I am not worthy, then the trials will prove it." For a long moment, no one spoke. Then Lysara smiled. It was a small smile, barely there, but Nathan saw it. "Well spoken, human. We shall see what the trials reveal about all of you." She turned and walked toward a door behind the platform. As she disappeared, the buzz of conversation filled the hall once more. Ambassador Kresh slid close to Nathan. His forked tongue flicked out, tasting the air near the human's face. "Sleep well tonight, little human," he whispered. "The first trial has killed beings far stronger than you. By tomorrow night, you will be nothing but a memory and a joke." Nathan met the Vrikari's cold eyes without flinching. "We will see," he said. He turned and walked away, ignoring the laughter that followed him. Tomorrow would come soon enough. He needed to rest while he could. But as he walked through the crystal halls toward his small guest room, Nathan allowed himself one small moment of doubt. What was he doing here? He was just a pilot, just a human. Against beings who had conquered stars and lived for ages, what chance did he really have? Then he remembered his father's voice from long ago, before the mining accident that had taken everything. You do not have to be the strongest, son. You just have to be the one who does not quit. Nathan squared his shoulders and kept walking. He would not quit. Whatever came tomorrow, he would face it, and maybe, just maybe, that would be enough. The Chamber of Echoes was nothing like anything Nathan had ever seen. The walls seemed to be made of something that was not quite solid and not quite light. They shifted and moved when he looked at them directly, but stayed still when he looked away. The floor beneath his feet felt real, but when he looked down, he could see swirling colors of hyperspace moving far below. Like looking through a window into madness. 17 candidates stood in a circle around the chamber. The royal arbiter floated at the center. He was an ancient Aetherian whose body had become more light than flesh over his many thousands of years of life. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Welcome to the first trial," he said. "The trial of mind. Before you will appear doorways. Each doorway leads to the labyrinth of consciousness. You will enter and navigate to the center. The labyrinth will test you. It will attack your thoughts, your memories, your very sense of self." Prince Vorn of the Morthic stepped forward. His body was made of perfect purple crystal that caught the light beautifully. "And if we fail?" he asked. His voice had the sound of glass chimes. "If you fail, your mind will break," the arbiter replied simply. "You will be removed from the competition and spend the rest of your life in the healing halls. If you are lucky." A murmur passed through the candidates. Nathan felt his stomach turn cold. Mind games. Of course, it would be mind games. Humans had no defenses against psychic attacks. Every other species here had some form of mental shielding. The Vrikari had been bred for it. The Sylvani practiced meditation for centuries. The Morthic had minds made of crystal that could resist. Outside influence. Nathan had nothing but the brain. He was born with. High Lord Taran looked at him with something that might have been pity. "Human," he said, "there is no shame in withdrawing. Your species lacks even basic mental protection. The labyrinth will destroy you in seconds. Better to live as a coward than die as a fool." Nathan took a slow breath. "Thanks for the advice," he said. The arbiter raised his hands. "Let the trial begin." 17 doorways appeared in the air before them. Each one glowed with soft light that seemed to pull at Nathan's eyes. One by one, the candidates stepped forward. Ambassador Kresh went first, his massive body sliding through his doorway with confidence. Prince Vorn followed, his crystal form catching the light as he vanished. High Lord Taran gave Nathan one last look of disgust before stepping through his own door. Nathan was the last to move. He stood before his doorway and looked into the swirling light within. He could feel something on the other side. Something vast and hungry. Every instinct told him to run. Instead, he stepped through. The world twisted around him. Up became down. Left became right. Then, even those concepts stopped making sense. Nathan found himself standing in a place that was not really a place. It was like being inside a dream, except he was awake. The ground beneath him shifted with every step. The sky above changed colors every time he blinked. Then the attacks began. The first one hit him like a hammer to the soul. Suddenly he was 8 years old again, standing outside the mine where his parents worked. Alarms were screaming. People were running. Someone was telling him there had been a collapse. Someone was telling him his mother and father were gone. Nathan felt the grief wash over him like a wave. For a moment, he was that child again, lost and alone and terrified. But he had lived with this memory for 26 years. He knew its shape. He knew its weight. He took a breath and let it pass through him instead of fighting against it. Keep moving, he told himself. Just keep moving. He walked forward. The labyrinth threw memory after memory at him. His first love, who had left him for someone richer. The day his ship had failed in deep space, and he had nearly died from lack of air. The friend who had bled out in his arms after a pirate attack while help was still hours away. Each memory hurt. Each one tried to drag him down into despair. But Nathan had made peace with his pain long ago. Humans did not have the luxury of forgetting. They could not meditate their trauma away or seal it behind crystal walls. They had to carry it with them every day of their short lives. And in carrying it, they learned to walk with weight on their shoulders. Through the strange space of the labyrinth, Nathan sensed the other candidates. Prince Vorn was screaming somewhere to his left. The perfect crystal of his mind, which had never faced true pain, was cracking under the pressure of emotions it could not understand. A Sylvani lord was curled in a ball, lost in a loop of his own guilt and regret. Ambassador Kresh was still moving, but barely. His mental training was holding, but the labyrinth had found something dark in his past. Something he had buried deep. Now it was pulling that darkness up into the light. Nathan kept walking. The labyrinth seemed to sense that its normal attacks were not working. It changed its approach. Instead of throwing pain at him, it tried to confuse him. The ground split into 1,000 paths. Each path led to what looked like the center. Each path was a lie. Nathan stopped and closed his eyes. He could not outthink the labyrinth. He could not outfight it. But maybe he did not need to. Humans had survived for thousands of years on a planet that tried to kill them every day. They had survived not by being the strongest or the smartest, but by trusting their instincts. Nathan opened his eyes and picked a path. Not because it looked right. Because it felt right. He was wrong. The path led to a dead end. So he turned around and picked another path. And another. And another. Each wrong turn hurt. The labyrinth punished failure with stabs of psychic pain. But Nathan had spent his whole life failing and trying again. He had crashed 3 ships before he learned to fly properly. He had been fired from 7 jobs before he found his place as a cargo pilot. Failure was not the end. It was just part of the journey. Finally, after what felt like hours, he saw it. The center of the labyrinth. A small platform of solid light floating in the void. Nathan ran. The labyrinth threw everything it had at him in those final moments. Every fear, every doubt, every dark thought he had ever had. It showed him futures where he failed and everyone laughed. It showed him versions of himself that had given up and become nothing. It screamed into his mind that he was small and weak and worthless. Nathan ignored it all and kept running. He reached the platform and collapsed onto its surface. Light surrounded him, warm and gentle now. The trial was over. The arbiter's voice filled his mind. The human candidate Nathan Cole has reached the center. Time recorded, 47 minutes. This is the fastest completion in recorded history. Nathan lay on his back and stared up at nothing. His whole body was shaking. His mind felt like it had been beaten with hammers. But he was alive. He was whole. He had won. The light carried him out of the labyrinth and back to the Chamber of Echoes. When his vision cleared, he saw that he was the first to return. The other doorways still glowed with activity. Some of them flickered with disturbing lights as the candidates within fought their battles. Over the next 2 hours, others emerged. High Lord Taran came out pale and shaking, but intact. Ambassador Kresh was covered in something that might have been sweat, his scales dull with exhaustion. Slowly, the survivors gathered. Prince Vorn did not return. When the healers finally pulled him from the labyrinth, his crystal body had cracked in 100 places. His mind was gone, lost somewhere in the maze of his own broken thoughts. In the end, Only 14 candidates remained. The arbiter announced the results. The trial of mind is complete. The ranking by time is as follows. Nathan Cole of Earth, first place. Ambassador Kresh of the Vakari Empire, second place. Lord Tarn of the Sylvani Council, third place. Silence filled the chamber. Every eye turned to Nathan. He could barely stand. His head was pounding. He wanted nothing more than to sleep for a week. But he forced himself to meet their stares without looking away. How? High Lord Tarn demanded. How is this possible? Humans have no mental training, nor psychic shields. You should have been destroyed in the first minute. Nathan thought about it for a moment. Where I come from, he said slowly, we have a saying. What does not kill you makes you stronger. Humans spend our whole lives carrying pain. We learn to walk with it. We learn to keep moving, even when everything hurts. He looked at Prince Vorn's empty place in the circle. Your crystal mind was perfect, he said quietly. It had never known real pain. So when pain came, it shattered. My mind is full of cracks and scars. But those cracks are what let me bend instead of break. No one had anything to say to that Dob later that evening. Nathan visited the healing halls where Prince Vorn lay. The Morthic was still alive, but his mind was gone. His body lay still, the crystal flickering with confused light. You would have won, Nathan told him. If you had been stronger, you would have beaten me easily. But strength is not always about power. Sometimes it is about knowing how to fail and keep going. Prince Vorn did not respond. He would never respond to anything again. Nathan left the healing halls and walked slowly to his room. Tomorrow would bring the second trial. He had no idea what it would be. But whatever came, he would face it the same way he faced everything, one step at a time. The great hall of this celestial palace had never been so full. Every seat was taken. Every balcony was packed. Beings from every corner of the 12 systems had come to witness the final ceremony. The choosing of Queen Lysara's champion was an event that happened once in a generation. No one wanted to miss it. Outside the hall, billions more watched through quantum-linked broadcasts. On worlds of fire and ice, on stations floating in the void, on ships traveling between stars, every screen showed the same image. The 8 surviving candidates standing before the celestial throne. Nathan stood at the end of the line. His formal clothes were the same ones he had worn on the first night, simple and plain compared to the magnificent robes and armor of the others. Ambassador Kresh gleamed in ceremonial dress that cost more than Nathan would earn in 10 lifetimes. Lady Isha wore a gown that seemed to be made of captured moonlight. Lord Tarn's robes flowed with patterns that shifted and changed like living things. Nathan looked like exactly what he was, a cargo pilot who did not belong. The hall fell silent as Queen Lysara Velthani rose from her throne. She wore the crown of stars, a circle of captured light that had been worn by every ruler of the Aetherian Dominion for 100,000 years. Her silver skin seemed to glow from within. Her eyes held the depth of galaxies. My people, she began, and her voice carried to every corner of the hall and to every world watching from afar. For 10,000 years, we have chosen our champions from among the powerful. We have looked for strength, for influence, for legacy. We have believed that the mightiest beings would make the greatest partners. She paused, and something changed in her expression. But our empire grows tired. Our people have become comfortable. Our enemies see our weakness and grow bold. We have everything, and so we have forgotten what it means to fight for anything. She began to walk down the steps of her throne, moving past the candidates without looking at them. I watched the trials, she continued. Through means the candidates were not meant to know. I saw everything that happened. And what I saw changed my understanding of what our empire truly needs. She stopped in front of Nathan Dodd. He met her eyes. Up close, He could see flecks of gold and silver swimming in the purple depths of her gaze. She was beautiful beyond words, ancient beyond understanding. And she was looking at him like he was the only being in the room. I saw a human with no psychic power defeat the labyrinth by accepting his own pain instead of fighting it, she said. I saw a fragile body survive furnace by adapting to the environment instead of trying to conquer it. I saw a mortal soul stand before immortal judges and offer nothing but honest truth about who he was. She turned to face the assembly. The Aetherian Dominion has stood for 100,000 years by seeking the strong. But I have learned that strength takes many forms. Sometimes the strongest being in the room is the one who has nothing but still refuses to give up. Ambassador Kresh stepped forward. His forked tongue flicked out in agitation. Your Majesty, surely you cannot mean to consider the human. He's a lesser being. His species is barely civilized. His life will be over in decades while you will live for ages. This would be an insult to the Dominion. Queen Lysara did not raise her voice. She did not need to. Ambassador, you speak of what the human lacks. Let me speak of what he has. He has courage that does not depend on power. He has wisdom that comes from suffering. He has a heart that helps enemies even in the middle of competition. She looked at Kresh with eyes that had seen empires rise and fall. When you were dying on furnace, who stopped to help you? When you needed cooling moss to survive, who gave it to you? Not your fellow Vrakari, not the Sylvani or the Morthic. The human, the being you called lesser, the one you mocked and insulted from the first moment he arrived. Kresh had no answer. He lowered his head and stepped back. Lysara turned to Nathan once more. She extended her hand to him. Nathan Cole of Earth, will you stand as my champion? The hall exploded with noise, shouts of disbelief, cries of outrage. Some beings were standing and pointing at Nathan like he was a disease. Others sat in stunned silence, unable to process what they had just heard. Nathan looked at the Queen's offered hand. Then he looked at the chaos around him. Then he looked back at her. I should probably tell you something first, he said quietly, so only she could hear. I am going to embarrass you. I will use the wrong fork at dinners. I will mispronounce names. I will say the wrong thing at the wrong time. And someday, probably, sooner than you want, I will grow old and die while you are still young. Lysara smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine, nothing like the formal expression she showed to the public. And that is exactly why I need you, she said. My people have forgotten what death means. They have forgotten that time is precious. They have forgotten that every moment matters, because moments do not last forever. You will remind them. You will remind me. Nathan considered this for a long moment. Then he took her hand. The touch of her skin was like touching starlight. Warm and cool at the same time. Ancient and new. Something passed between them in that moment. Something that Nathan could not name, but knew he would never forget. Queen Lysara raised their joined hands high for all to see. Let the galaxy witness, she proclaimed, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade through cloth. The human Nathan Cole is my champion. He will stand at my side. He will speak with my voice. He will carry my authority. The hall fell silent. Any who mock him mock me. Any who challenge him face the power of the Aetherian Dominion. And any who doubt him. She looked into Nathan's eyes with something like wonder. Have not been paying attention. In the silence that followed, Nathan Cole, former cargo pilot from a forgotten human colony, stood beside the most powerful being in the known galaxy. His heart was pounding so hard, he was sure everyone could hear it. His legs felt like they might give out at any moment. He was still terrified, but he was also, for the first time in his life, exactly where he was supposed to be. The ceremony continued for hours after that. There were rituals and traditions and speeches that Nathan barely understood. Important beings came to offer congratulations through teeth clenched with barely hidden rage. Others seemed genuinely curious about this human who had done the impossible. Through it all, Lasara stayed by his side. And slowly Nathan began to understand something. This was not about him being worthy or unworthy. This was about something larger. The galaxy had grown stale. The great empires had achieved everything and lost their hunger. They needed to remember what it felt like to be young and afraid and determined to survive against all odds. They needed humanity, not because humans were strong, but because they were not. Because every achievement was earned through struggle. Because every victory came at a cost. Because humans looked at the impossible and said, "Let me try anyway." Late that night, when the ceremony was finally over and they stood alone on a balcony overlooking the stars, Lasara spoke to Nathan without her formal voice. "Are you ready for this?" she asked. "The life ahead will not be easy. Many will hate you simply for what you are. They will try to destroy you. They will never stop reminding you that you do not belong." Nathan looked out at the endless stars. Somewhere out there was Earth, the small blue world where his species had crawled out of the mud and reached for the sky. "They have been telling me I do not belong since the moment I arrived," he said. "I am still here, and I will keep being here until my last breath." Lasara was quiet for a moment. Then she did something that surprised him. She laughed. Not a formal laugh or a polite laugh, but a real one, full of genuine joy. "The ancestors were right about you," she said. "You cannot be predicted, and that makes you more valuable than you know." She took his hand again, and together they watched the stars spin slowly overhead. Somewhere in the galaxy, a young human was looking up at those same stars, dreaming of the day they might travel among them. Somewhere else, an ancient Detheran was reconsidering everything they thought they knew about worth and strength. The galaxy was changing, one mind at a time. And at the center of it all stood a cargo pilot from nowhere, holding hands with a queen of stars, ready to face whatever came next. Not because he was the strongest, not because he was the smartest, but because he was the one who never gave up. And sometimes that was enough. The ship dropped them on the dark side of a planet called Furnace, and Nathan understood at once why it had that name. This world orbited so close to its sun that one side was always facing the fire. That side was hot enough to melt metal. The other side, where they now stood, was so cold that the air itself was starting to freeze. Between these two extremes was a thin strip of land where life was possible. But possible did not mean easy. The wind cut like knives. The ground was covered with sharp rocks and deep cracks. Strange plants that glowed with inner heat grew in twisted shapes, fighting for every bit of warmth they could find. The arbiter's voice came through small devices attached to their ears. "Welcome to the trial of body. Your task is simple. Cross from the shadow terminus where you now stand to the light terminus on the other side of the habitable zone. The distance is 50 miles. You have 12 hours. No technology is allowed except the tracker in your ear. No weapons. Only your body and your will." 14 candidates stood at the starting line. They had been given simple clothes made from a basic material that would not protect them from heat or cold. Nothing else. Ambassador Kresh looked at the path ahead with confidence. His scales were designed to handle extreme temperatures. The Vrekari had evolved on a world of fire and ice. This was their natural ground. "At last," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "a trial suited to real warriors. No more tricks of the mind. Now we see who's truly strong." He looked at Nathan with open mockery. "Human bodies break in conditions like this. Your species cannot regulate temperature properly. You have no armor, no scales, no protection. The cold will freeze your blood before you travel 10 miles. Nathan said nothing. He was too busy studying the landscape, looking for patterns in the rocks and plants. The horn sounded. The trial began. Ambassador Crash burst forward at once, moving with surprising speed for his size. His powerful body carried him over the broken ground like it was nothing. The other strong candidates followed, each using their natural advantages to push ahead. Nathan did not run. He walked. High Lord Taran passed him within the first minute. "Giving up already, human?" He called back with a laugh. Nathan ignored him. He was watching the glowing plants, noticing how they clustered around certain rocks. Those rocks must be warmer, he realized. Heat vents from below. He filed that information away. The first hour was the hardest. The cold was beyond anything Nathan had ever experienced. Every breath burned his lungs. His fingers went numb, then his toes. He could feel his body starting to slow down as the cold reached into his core, but he kept moving. And he kept thinking. The other candidates were faster, but they were wasting energy. They fought against the environment, trying to power through it with their natural strength. Nathan could not afford to do that. He had to work with the environment instead. He found his first heat vent after 2 hours. A crack in the ground where warm air rose from deep below. He stopped there and warmed his hands and feet. He did not stay long, but those few minutes of heat were enough to push back the cold creeping into his bones. Around him, he could hear the sounds of the trial going wrong for others. A scream in the distance as a Sylvani lord fell into a hidden crack. The roar of frustration from a candidate who had taken a wrong path and hit a wall of ice. Nathan kept moving. The middle zone was worse than the edges. Here, the temperature swung wildly from cold to hot and back again within minutes. Nathan watched a Morthak candidate shatter. The crystal being's body could not handle the rapid changes. It cracked and fell apart, leaving glittering pieces scattered across the rocks. Nathan adapted. When the hot winds came, he found shade behind rocks and waited. When the cold returned, he moved quickly to generate body heat. He ate things he found along the way. Strange bugs that lived in the warm spots. Plants that tasted terrible but gave him energy. Nothing the other candidates would touch. But Nathan had eaten worse during hard times on cargo runs. 6 hours in, he caught up with Ambassador Kresh. The Vakari had stopped. His scales, which had protected him from the cold, were now working against him. The heat of the middle zone was cooking him inside his own armor. He lay against a rock, breathing hard, his tongue hanging loose. "You!" Kresh gasped when he saw Nathan approach. "How are you still alive?" Nathan stopped beside him. "I am not fighting the planet," he said. "I am working with it." He pulled some of the wet moss he had collected and handed it to the Vakari. "Put this under your scales. It will help cool you down." Kresh stared at him with confusion. "Why would you help me? I am your enemy in this trial." Nathan shrugged. "Where I come from, we do not leave people to die. Even people we do not like." He walked on without waiting for a response. The final stretch toward the light terminus was the most dangerous. The temperature rose with every step. The air shimmered with heat. Nathan could feel his skin starting to burn just from the warmth in the atmosphere. He found a stream of meltwater running from the ice side toward the fire side. It was cold enough to hurt, but not cold enough to kill. Nathan soaked his clothes in it and wrapped wet cloth around his head. The cooling effect would not last long, but it did not need to. He just needed to reach the end. High Lord Taran was ahead of him, moving fast but starting to stumble. The Sylvani were graceful creatures, but they were not built for endurance. Their 4 arms, which gave them advantage in many things, also meant they needed more energy to keep moving. Nathan passed him without a word. The light terminus was a platform of white stone that marked the boundary of the safe zone. Beyond it, the world became pure fire. The sun hung massive and angry on the horizon, too close, too bright. A Sylvani woman named Lady Isha reached the platform first. She collapsed on the stone, gasping for air, her pale skin red with heat burns. Ambassador Kresh arrived second, barely alive, but still moving on pure stubbornness. Nathan arrived third. He fell to his knees on the platform and just breathed. Every part of his body hurt. His skin was burned in some places and frostbitten in others. His feet were bloody from the rocks. He had never been so tired in his entire life. But he had finished. Over the next 2 hours, the remaining candidates arrived one by one. Some had to be carried the final distance by floating medical drones that appeared when the trial detected they were about to die. Others stumbled across the line on their own powered dot in the end. Only 8 candidates completed the trial. The arbiter announced the results. The trial of body is complete. Time and physical condition have been measured. Adjusted for species advantages, the ranking is as follows. Nathan Cole of Earth, first place. Ambassador Kresh of the Vakari Empire, second place. Lady Isha of the Sylvani Council, third place. This time, no one laughed. No one made jokes about the human. They just stared at Nathan with something new in their eyes. High Lord Taran walked up to him. The proud Sylvani looked broken. He had finished 7th, barely surviving. His robes were torn. His silver eyes were dull with exhaustion. "I was wrong about you," he said quietly. "I thought you were weak because you are small and soft. But I see now that your weakness is your strength. You cannot power through problems like we do, so you learn to be clever instead. You cannot survive on your own strength, so you learn to use everything around you." Nathan nodded slowly. "Humans evolved on a world that tried to kill us every day," he said. "Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Deserts that covered entire continents. Plagues that killed half our population. We are still here because we learned to adapt to anything." Lady Isha had been listening. She stepped closer, curiosity replacing the disdain that had been in her eyes before. "Your species is so young," she said. "You have only been traveling between stars for 200 years. We have had 10,000. Yet here you stand, beating us at trials designed to test the finest beings in the galaxy." Nathan thought about that for a moment. "Maybe that is why we are still hungry," he said. "You have had everything for so long that you have forgotten what it is like to struggle. We have not. We remember what it means to fight for every single day of survival." The medical teams arrived to treat the wounded. Nathan let them wrap his burns and clean his cuts. He was too tired to do anything else, but as he was carried to the recovery ship, he allowed himself a small smile. 2 trials down. 1 to go. Whatever came next, he was ready. The sanctuary of ancestors floated in the empty space between 2 distant stars. It was not a station or a ship. It was something older and stranger. A temple built from solidified light, holding the collected consciousness of every Etherian ruler who had ever lived. 100,000 years of wisdom waited. Inside those glowing walls, Nathan stood with the 7 other surviving candidates in a waiting chamber that seemed to be made of captured starlight. Through the transparent walls, he could see the vast darkness of space stretching forever in every direction. It made him feel very small. "The final trial," the arbiter announced. His ancient form flickered in the chamber's strange light. "The trial of soul. You will enter the inner sanctum one at a time. There, you will stand before the ancestors. They will look into your heart. They will see everything you are, everything you have done, everything you hope to become." Ambassador Kresh shifted his massive body nervously. Even his confidence seemed shaken by this place. "And if they find us unworthy?" Lady Isha asked. The arbiter was quiet for a moment. "Those found unworthy will be rejected and removed from the competition. Those found truly lacking will be destroyed. The ancestors do not accept lies or pretense. They see only truth. Nathan felt ice form in his stomach. The first trial had tested his mind. The second had tested his body. Both of those he could prepare for. But this, having ancient beings look directly into his soul? He was just a cargo pilot from a forgotten colony. His life was full of failures and mistakes. He had lied and cheated and done things he was not proud of. What would these perfect beings see when they looked at him? One by one, the candidates entered the inner sanctum. One by one, they emerged. High Lord Taran came out first. The proud Silvani was pale and shaking. They see everything. He whispered to no one in particular. Every selfish thought, every moment of cruelty, everything you have ever tried to hide. Ambassador Kresh emerged next. The mighty Vrakari seemed somehow smaller than before. His scales had lost their shine. His eyes were empty. Lady Isha came out crying. Beautiful silver tears ran down her face. She did not speak to anyone. Each candidate who returned was changed. Whatever they had faced inside had left marks that would never heal. But they were alive. They had passed. Then came Nathan's turn. He walked through the doorway into the inner sanctum, and the universe fell away. He was floating in light. Not just surrounded by it, but inside it. The light was alive. It was made of thousands, millions of individual presences. The ancestors. Every ruler who had guided the Aetherian dominion for 100,000 years. They filled the space around him in rings that stretched into infinity. In the center of it all, Nathan hung suspended, naked in his soul. There was nowhere to hide. Nothing to protect him. A voice spoke. It was not one voice, but many, blended together into something that bypassed his ears and spoke directly to his mind. Human, you are the first of your kind to stand before us. We have watched your species from afar. You are young. You are brief. Your lives flicker and fade like sparks from a fire. Nathan did not know what to say, so he said nothing. The other candidates came before us with ambition. The voices continued. They wanted power. They wanted glory. They wanted to stand beside our daughter and rule the stars. What do you want, human? Nathan thought about the question. He thought about all the reasons he was supposed to be here. The debt of stars. The right he had earned by saving the queen. The chance to prove that humans were worthy of respect. But those were not the real reasons. Those were just words. I do not know, he said finally. The lights around him pulsed with something that might have been surprise. Explain, the voices commanded. Nathan took a breath. I never wanted to be here. I saved someone who needed help because that is what you do. I came to the trials because people told me I had the right to come and because everyone said I should not. I have spent my whole life being told what I cannot do. Humans are too weak. Humans are too small. Humans are too stupid. So when someone tells me I cannot do something, I want to try anyway. He paused, feeling the weight of 1,000,000 ancient eyes upon him. But honestly, I do not know if I should be here. I do not know if I am worthy to stand beside your queen. I am just a pilot. I fix engines. I haul cargo. I make bad decisions that sometimes work out. That is all I am. Silence filled the sanctuary. The lights seemed to draw closer, examining him from every angle. You feel fear, a single voice observed. It was older than the others, deeper, more fear than any candidate who has stood before us. Yes, Nathan admitted. I am terrified. Right now, I am more scared than I have ever been in my life. Yet, you do not try to hide it. The others came before us with masks. They tried to show us what they thought we wanted to see. You show us only what you are. Nathan almost laughed. I cannot hide anything from beings who can see into my soul. What would be the point? You would see the lie, and then you would see that I am also a liar. Better to just tell the truth and accept whatever comes. The lights began to move. They swirled around him in patterns that made his head spin. He felt them inside his mind, his memories, his deepest self. They saw everything. They saw the boy crying outside the mine that had taken his parents. They saw the young man lying about his age to join a rescue crew because he wanted to save people the way no one had saved his family. They saw the pilot holding his dying friend in the vacuum of space, promising to keep flying even when he wanted to give up. They saw every failure, every mistake, every moment of weakness and doubt. They saw the times he had been selfish and the times he had been cruel. They saw everything dark and broken inside him, but they also saw what he did with that darkness. They saw him wake up every morning and choose to keep going. They saw him help strangers, even when it cost him money and time. They saw him pull a queen from a dying star, not because he knew who she was, but because someone needed help. They saw a being who was cracked and scarred and far from perfect, but who chose to be good anyway. Not because it was easy, because it was right. The voices spoke again, and this time there was something new in their tone. Something Nathan had never heard from any alien species in all his travels. Respect. In 100,000 years, they said, no candidate has stood before us with such honesty. We have seen beings with power beyond measure. We have seen minds that could reshape reality. We have seen bodies that could survive the death of stars. But we have never seen a soul that knew itself so completely and accepted itself so fully. The oldest voice spoke alone now. You call yourself just a pilot, but we see more. We see a being who understands that strength is not about power. It is about choosing to stand up when you have every reason to fall down. It is about carrying your scars instead of hiding them. It is about being afraid and moving forward anyway. The lights pulled back, and Nathan found himself alone in the center of the sanctuary. The human Nathan Cole passes the trial of soul, the voices announced together. More than this, he passes with distinction. In 100,000 years, he's only the third being to receive this honor. Nathan did not know what to say. He did not know what to feel. He just stood there, suspended in light, trying to understand what had just happened. The voices spoke one final time, and their words would stay with him for the rest of his life. Go now, human. The Queen awaits. And know this, we will be watching. Not because we doubt you, because we want to see what you become. In all our ages, we have learned to predict the futures of empires and the fates of stars. But you, Nathan Cole of Earth, are something we cannot predict. And that makes you more valuable than you know. The light carried him out of the sanctuary and back to the waiting chamber. He stumbled as his feet touched the floor, barely able to stand. The other candidates stared at him. The Arbiter's ancient face showed something that might have been shock. Distinction, the Arbiter whispered. The ancestors granted you distinction. This has not happened in 50,000 years. Nathan did not respond. He was too busy trying to remember how to breathe. But somewhere deep inside, in the place where hope lived even in the darkest times, he felt something new beginning to grow. Maybe, just maybe, he belonged here after all.